The telecommunications landscape has changed beyond all recognition in the past two decades. In 1989, there was no telecom. Cell phones were still pretty much a mystery, and there was also no World Wide Web. After that, a handful of university computer scientists were experimenting with an amazing technology then called email. Telecommunications was a state monopoly, and most people thought it would stay that way. But today, we look at the revolution, which is telecoms, and in studio we're joined by Vox, Orion, MD, Jacques du Toit. Thanks so much, Jacques, for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Annie.
I mean, you know, the fear of technology. I remember with the millennium bug and everybody going crazy thinking that the world has come to an abrupt end. We've come a long way in telecom since then. What's the progress that's been made?
It's been amazing since 2004 when deregulation was announced. Prior to that, telecom was the monopoly, as you said. Today we've got in excess of 350 ECNS license holders, which means various companies can procure services from the five major network operators. That gives the consumer and the corporate a lot of choice, but unfortunately all that choice can also bring along a lot of confusion. So one needs to try and align yourselves with a service provider that's completely technology agnostic and technology and network agnostic.
Yeah, because at the moment we know the ones that are making news headlines, especially when it came to the whole tendering process or trying to bid for a second service provider, a standard line, in this case Neotel. So you're saying there's so many others in the players in the market?
The three mobile operators and the two fixed line operators are network operators. And then you get a layer of service providers that can procure network services from those operators. They can package them in an individual fashion in such a way to provide the corporate or the consumer something that is different.
Are we up to speed with the rest of the world, especially developing economies, the likes of India, Brazil? Are we up there?
I think we're definitely getting there. I think the consumer market is driving prices down. They're requiring and putting a lot of pressure on ICASA to drive prices down. Since the regulation was announced, we're seeing a lot more choice in the market, and I think we're getting there, definitely.
Yeah, but we live in a very high-paced world. The mobility and being able to access your information while you're on the run is very important to consumers.
There's a big drive away from voice towards data applications. I think the voice market has reached such a saturated component. It's now getting into what applications can we run off the data platform. And that's why it's so important to choose your service provider correctly, that he can provide a basket of voice products, a basket of data products, faxing products, short messaging products, MMS products. All of that now forms part of this telecommunications array of services.
Yeah, but whoever is playing in the market needs to be on top of their game, because it's changing consistently, and particularly with products or applications.
Yeah, I think the risk that we've got in a deregulated market, the barrier to entry is lowered quite significantly. So you suddenly see an influx of players appearing out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And we saw that in 2004 when voice over IP was regulated. Suddenly every person got involved in the game, and 4 years later I think there's 5% of those initial players left.
Yeah.
And we'll see that exact same thing happen again.
Okay, a guide 101 voice IP, how does it work exactly? Does it just transfer voice to text?
No, voice over IP is a protocol used where we carry voice over a data link. In the past, voice was carried over a voice link and your data over a data link. In this market that we're facing now, with lower cost of bandwidth, you now have the ability to carry voice over that same data link. It's commonly known as convergence. Companies use a lot of convergence inside a building where bandwidth is unlimited. It's a little bit more complex when you route traffic across a wide area network or between branches, for instance.
But all these fantastic choices, do they filter through to the consumer, especially are they cost effective? Or do you find that sometimes we have all these applications that you really don't need? For starters, you have a camera in your phone and all sorts of things. Meantime, you hardly ever use it.
No, I think there's definitely applications. The important thing is to recognize what you can use in a converged environment. It's an horses for courses approach. Certain people will have all the gadgets on his phone and will never use it. Will definitely apply his mind, buy something that he knows he can use and will be able to.
And this telecom business now and the deregulation and the latest development is fantastic, particularly for small, medium enterprises, because and makes it cheaper as well to do your operations. You can be anywhere and still conduct your business effectively.
Correct, and I think that's the benefit of a converged environment and a deregulated environment. You need one set of infrastructure. You can run your voice and data applications on that same set of infrastructure. It goes a little bit further. You can use telephone management solutions, short messaging solutions, faxing solutions, all of that. And if you look at that holistic approach, you start cross-subsidizing. So in the past, a corporate or consumer had to deal with 5 or 6 or 7 different companies to get 6 or 7 different services. Now you can get all of those services from one entity.
Yeah, and what about penetration in the rest of Africa? Because if you look at interconnectivity, for instance, you know, South Africa would be a classic example of a success story.
Just need to look at MTN and Vodacom as an example. They're expanding their footprint into Africa. I think they've been very successful in that. If you look at the revenues that they are publishing, you know, of the telecommunication expenditure there, it shows us that the market is going up north.
Yeah, but it's still high risk, is it?
It's high risk, but they do it on a prepaid basis. So as long as the money is in the bank up front, the risk is mitigated.
Yeah. And I mean, with your listing, it hasn't impacted on you with the global economic, because at the end of the day, you still need to be connected, isn't it?
I think where we're seeing the upside is all our services are driving costs down. So corporates will look at us and say, okay, if I implement all 5 or 6 services from Vox Orion, we'll be able to reduce our telecommunications expenditure. It's not a decision to say this is a nice to have.
Yeah.
This is an application that will drive costs down.
But do you think we've pretty much exhausted everything in terms of innovations when it comes to telecommunications? I mean, what is the next big thing?
I think every day we see something new on the market. Vox Telecom, the listed entity, has recently launched an entity called Vox Telepreneur.
Yeah.
And that is addressing the applications in the consumer market, where it gives a consumer, somebody in his house, the opportunity to route voice calls over ADSL, for instance.
Yeah.
And any inter-Vox Telepreneur call, for instance, is at no cost. Applications over time will be built on that platform.
Yeah.
So we've definitely have an exhaustion.
But are we developing our own applications as well? I mean, what is our equivalent to Skype, for instance?
It's just called another version of Skype. Vox Telepreneur will be will have an application called Mahala, for instance. So I think that the naming convention is starting to become irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's the application that you need to look at.
Exciting stuff, isn't it?
Great.
Thanks so much, Jacques, for coming through this morning.
Thank you, Cindy.
We're speaking to Jacques du Toit. He's the MD for Vox Orion, speaking about how far telecommunications have come since the early 80s. If you'd like to share your stories about, especially if you're a techno geek, you can send us your comments on sunrise@etv.co.za. Now, though, let's take a look at how the rand is performing.